Now let's take a look at moving the NX or the tracker. So what we want to do is, now that we've studied kind of the theory of DC motors and some of the terminology, we want to look at how we can create a program to perform locomotion using the Mindstorms. So one of the first places to start is to give yourself a task of where we're going to move the robot. So for example, you could just say, well, I'm going to throw down some random blocks and see if it moves, but it's a little bit funner to actually give yourself something to do. So one of the things you can do is map out a couple of these very simple courses. So for example, this one right here, maybe you put some masking tape down on the ground and you put a circle, and you're going to say, I'm going to put the tracker right here, and I'm going to move it forward and try to land it in this square. Now what we're doing with locomotion in this video is we're not going to look at any sensors or anything like that. We're basically just going to do this as a sequence of tasks where we're just going to basically guess and check. So we could, do a certain number of rotations on the tracks, and then see how far it goes, and then try it, and then if it went halfway, then double it and go. Or we could do it for a certain number of seconds. But it's kind of interesting just getting started this way, because you start to see the impact of things like coasting and the momentum of the robot and the surface that you're on. So if you're on carpet versus a linoleum floor, it moves a lot faster or slower, slower on carpet. And you can also start to see the impact of having the batteries wear down over time. So maybe you have a program that works perfectly at the beginning of the day, and then after 4 hours you notice that the robot just isn't quite making it to the destination, and it's because the batteries are going down and the servo motors aren't getting enough juice. So we're going to just basically do this. We're going to start with a simple, straightforward task, and then let's do a turn. So we'll look at a couple different turning options that you have in the Mindstorm software. So we'll put a little obstacle out there, and we'll try to turn a left hand. Then we'll do a couple obstacles, and then we'll end with a square. And what's neat about this one is that you could do this with a sequence of tasks. So just forward, turn left, and then forward, turn left, forward, turn left, forward. But we can also do it with a loop. So we'll end by looking at how we can do a looping structure in the programming interface and use that to accomplish a repetitive task. Okay, so at this point, let's bring up our EV3 Mindstorms software, and this is the welcome screen that you're going to see. So just to kind of recap where we're at, down here are a bunch of tutorials that show you how to run the software. So you're getting started, that's like plugging it in and everything, which we've done. Software overview, it gives you just kind of a walkthrough of where the blocks are, where the graphical blocks are, and I'll do that a little bit as we go on the locomotion. And then content, and then it's got some users guides, and in here you might see some construction plans, etc. So there's some resources down here. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to come up here to this plus, and this is going to say add project. And this graphical interface really relies on this hover over. So you're going to hover over things and see what they are a lot. So go ahead and click on add project, and it takes a minute, and it's going to bring up this blank kind of palette for you. And the way that this works is each of the items, each of the programming constructs that you're going to use are a graphical block. Okay, so this is going to represent your start state. And you're going to basically move left to right, and you're going to drag these graphical blocks into here, and you're going to connect them according to what you want to accomplish. So down here you're going to see these different tabs that are different colors, and they're not labeled, so you have to actually mouse over them to see what they are. So if I mouse over this green one, you see that's an action, and what you're going to see down here is you're going to have control of the medium motor. Okay, so that's the one that's not used for locomotion on the EV3. It's used for kind of arms and spinners and stuff like that. And then you're going to have a large motor. That's what they call the two servo motors. This block right here controls one motor at a time. If you configure your robot into a tank configuration, or just having two wheels, then these two blocks are what you can use to accomplish a move forward, backward, or turn. This one right here is a steering one, so you can actually just tell it, I want to turn to the left, and it kind of moves forward and turns to the left like you would in a car. This right here, move tank, this is the one we're going to be using primarily to move straight. And if I click on it and drag it up, what you'll see is I'll pop this down and we'll kind of look at some of the options we have. This one right here allows you to control the power of the left and the right wheel or servo, and remember that they're actually connected to the tracks of the EV3. Now, if you want to change the ports, what you do is you mouse over the actual letter. So like I just clicked on C and it tells me I could actually change the port number. This is correct for us. So if we look at this, so here's my tracker. If I look at this, I've got my my left on B and my right on C, and so this is how I have it set up. So when I think about going forward, it's going to move B forward and C forward. If I wanted to turn, for example, turn right, I could actually adjust my power down a little bit on my right motor by clicking on this little drop down and adjusting it, and that would turn right. So when you start turning on here is where you really need to make sure that your motors are connected up correctly. But if I want to change B, you click right on it. Okay, and so let's go through the options here. If I come over to here, I've got the move tank, and that's telling me, you know, what this block is. If I come over to this little thing, this is how you set what it's going to do in terms of how long it's going to do. So you could say off, and you might think, why would I want to have a move block that's an off? Well, that's if you wanted to stop. So if I want to move forward and then stop and wait there for something to happen, then you could just say on forever. So this would be like unlimited rotations, and we'll see how we use that. Then you can turn it on for seconds, on for degrees, which is going to be the number of degrees that you turn on the servo, and then you could do on for full rotations. So you could actually say rotate the servo 360-degree rotation. Okay, so then over here, depending on what you choose, let's go ahead and just do it for seconds. When I change the type of control we're going to use for the block, then that changes this column right here, and so I can tell it how long I want to go. So let's just go for 2 seconds, and then over here you're going to have what it's going to do at the end. So you can either have it come to a hard stop, so go for 2 seconds and then slam the brakes on, or you can have it coast. Okay, so I'm going to put it on coast just to make it a little bit smoother. And at this point, I have my first block in here that would make the tracker move. Before I download that, let's just look at a few more things with the blocks available. These are actions you can do. So there's also an action for changing the display. You could play a sound. You could change the lighting on the brick. And then you'll see these ones when we get into different types of programming. So you have flow controls. So you're going to have your loop and your switch statement here. And then you're going to have over here, you're going to have sensors. So this is where we're going to be able to control all the different sensors. So the infrared or the color sensor, or even the touch sensor or timers. And so these are other blocks for you. And then there's more complicated ones like data operations and advanced, and then you can make custom ones here. Data operations are where you're collecting information. You might collect it from a sensor and use that for intelligent decisions. But the point of what we're doing right now is just to move. So what I'm going to do is I am going to take this program, and I just powered on my tracker, or my EV3. And what I want to do at this point is let's get some naming. Let's get some names set up here. So the project itself can have multiple programs. So I can actually create another program by clicking right here on this X, and it'll create another program. And it's kind of neat because you could have a project just for locomotion, okay? And when you download, it's going to download all the programs, so you can actually have it on the EV3 where you can hear that just turned on. It takes about a minute to turn on. But you can download the whole project, then you can run through these different programs. So first thing I'm going to do is let me change the name of the first program, and let's just call it task 1. And then I'll delete my second program by clicking on that X. And then what I want to do is I want to save this somewhere. So I'm going to go ahead and say File, Save Project. And it's going to ask me where to save these ones. So I'm going to go ahead and call this, let's call it Loco 1 project. Actually, let's just call it Loco 1 PRJ. Okay, so it's short, and that stands for locomotion. So I save that off, and then when I download it, I'll actually get a folder on the brick that I can run through, and I'll see this task 1 program. So at this point, I am powered on. I have my USB cable connected. I can see that it's connected over here because my status indicator came up. And then what I can do is I can either download or I can download and run. Now again, I want to caution you that if you download and run, I'm going to pick this up so that it doesn't take off on me, but I'll download and run. So it ran for 2 seconds. The danger in that is that it's got a cable connected to it. So a lot of times you'll hit go and this will run and just yank this cable and it'll pull your computer off the table or something like that. So I've already downloaded it and ran, so it is downloaded, but I'm going to go ahead and just download it just to show you how to do it. And you can hear that noise when it goes in there. So let's go ahead and see how we do this. So on here now, I'm going to see these different programs, and what I can do is I can browse to the second tab over, which is the Files tab, and then I'm going to I use the center button to select. I use the left and rights to go left and right, and then I use the up and downs to go up and down through the menus associated with the tab. So I'm going to go ahead and I see my Loco project folder. I select it, and underneath it I see task 1. So I select that, and it will run. And now it's always selected, so that's really nice because then I can run it over and over. So I've set up a little course here, and what I have is I have a piece of paper that I taped on the ground, and I'll have my obstacle as my coffee cup in a minute, but I'm going to see if I can start right here. I'll start it on line on my desk, and I'll see if I get there. So I go ahead and say go. And I made it about a little bit less than half. Okay, so then you say, well, okay, what do I do now? Well, you try it and tweak your program. So if I want to increase that, what I want to do now is I want to come in here and I want to increase the amount of time. So let's go ahead and let's change it to like 5 seconds. Okay, so now I'm going to download that and it's ready to go, and I'll unplug it and let's see if it runs and does it good this time. Okay, I got to browse over to I'm going to browse over to my file, Loco, and then I got task 1, and here I go. So I'm going to go. 3. Almost perfect. Okay, close enough. Okay, so we did our first task, so this was fantastic. Okay, so now I'm sitting here, and I want to go ahead and do my next program. First of all, what are we trying to do? Let's go up, turn left, and then end. Okay, so I'm going to go up around an obstacle, and I want to look at a couple different turns here. So I'm going to come in here. Why don't I take my course and I'll put it over here now, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have an obstacle out there, and I'll have the obstacle be this coffee cup. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to go forward, left, and turn. Now I've already got my forward set up, and I know that basically from the way it was kind of set up, I should probably go forward about 4 seconds. Okay, so now I want to turn left. So I can do it 2 different ways. So the first way I can do it is I can actually copy and paste this move tank, or just drag in a new one, and I can do what's called a skid steer, which is where I just take the wheels and I take my right one and go forward and my left one and go backwards. So if I took this and I'm going to type in -75, then this would just spin in a circle. Okay, now I don't really know how much it's going to spin because I need to test it. But this is an example of how you could just stop and spin on a dime, okay? And then let's go ahead and put in another move. And so instead of dragging them from the bottom, I'm just copying and pasting. So I'm just grabbing them and copying and pasting. So then I'm going to move forward, and let's just say I move forward 2. Okay. All right. So this is a program. I really don't know how far I'm going to go forward. I think that's about right for this obstacle, to get around this obstacle. I think turning for, let's see, let's turn for 2 seconds. So skid steer for 2, and then let's move forward for 2. Okay. So we'll go ahead and do this. So let me download it. All right. Let me save everything here. So I save project and I go ahead and download, and it's ready to go. So now I'm going to go back to my folder and task 1, and I should have made this task 2, but that's all right. So here it goes. It's going forward. Stop. Skid steers. Holy moly, went way too much, and then it went forward. Okay, so we need to dial that down considerably. So I'm almost going to say let's dial down the turn time to 0.5. Okay, and then we'll go forward. All right, so let's try that. So we'll go File, Save Project, and now I'm going to do this again. Okay, so let's go ahead and download. All right, so there it went, and here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure we're on task 1, and we'll go ahead and go. So it's going forward. Here comes our skid steer. Not quite enough, but it did go forward about enough. So I think I got it here. I'm going to do one more time here. So let me change this to 1, and then I think we got it there. It seemed to need to go a little bit further to actually get to the piece of paper, but I think we got it now. So let's go ahead and save this, and we'll continue here. Okay, so a lot of this, just trial and error, which is fine. I mean, it moves you through the iteration of doing all this stuff. We've made our changes, so I'm going to go ahead and download. And I'm ready to go here. So I browse to my task and I say go. There it goes. Here comes the skid steer. Almost perfect. And it stopped right on it. Okay, great. Now here's what's interesting about that is I accomplished the task, but I also learned something, that my skid steer turned just a tiny bit too much. So I could come in here and say, it really needed to be just a tiny bit left. So let me just say 0.8. Other than that, everything's perfect. So now if I went ahead and said I want to do an obstacle where I want to go up, turn left, go over, and then turn right, and then come up to this, what I could do is, let's say I have another obstacle here, and let's say it's right here. Knowing that my last program, really what I could do is I could come along and say, I'm going to Control C this, and then I'm going to bring it over here. Let's see here. So I'm going to bring it right over here. Let me try to zoom out here. So I want to zoom out. What I'm going to do is hold down Control, and then I'm going to scroll out with my scroll bar. So then I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to now do the exact same turn, but what I want to do is I want to make this the exact opposite. So I'm going to make this -75, and then I'll make this 75, and then I know that this worked pretty well in terms of how far forward to go, so I'm going to Control C and Control V, or copy and paste, and I can drag that over to the end, and then we're good to go. Okay, so a little bit of navigating through this GUI. So up here is this pan tool. If you click on that, you can pan around, okay? And then if you want plus and minus in terms of zoom, if you don't want to use the scroll button on your mouse, you can do it that way. Then you also have this 1-to-1, which is going to make them the normal size that they're in, or you zoom out. So you can always start with 1-to-1, and then you can kind of zoom out to see what you want to do. So this right here, I should be able to download this. So let's go ahead and save it. And then let's go ahead and download it. And let's see what happens. Let's see how this works. So I go ahead and browse over to the local project in my task 1, and I'm off and running. Okay, so there it goes. See if my skid steer was adjusted correctly. Perfect. Close enough. Okay, so you can see how you get certain things moving. And then you kind of build on them. So another way we could have done a turn, though, is if I come down here and do this move steering, one of the things I could have done is I could have drugged that up, and let's take a look at how that is. So I click on it once. Actually, I got to be in this select tool here. So I click on it once, and I bring that up. And if I zoom in on it, the way it works is you make sure the motors are selected, and then what you do is you can tell it which way you're going to be turning by doing the slider. So you can tell it to go, you can have it turn a certain number of degrees, but it's a little different than the skid steer in terms of you can have it move forward. So it's more like a car, okay? So it's more like you're moving forward and then you're turning to the left as you move forward, or turning to the right as you move forward. So you can get a little bit gentler motion, so you don't actually just stop and then spin on a dime. So that's the other common way to do steering. Okay, so at this point, I want to now accomplish this final task, whereas I want to go in a square. All right, so I've got some good turns on here, but I don't want to do this with a sequence. What I'd rather do is I'd rather actually do this in a loop. So let's go in here and let's think about what I want to do. I want to go forward, and then I want to turn left, and then I really just want to do that 4 times, and that will allow me to accomplish a perfect square. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out and see what I have. I have moved forward for a certain amount of time, and I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit. I'm going to go forward for 3 seconds just because my desk's a little bit small, and I probably could do 2 seconds just to make it Let's go 2.5, just so it doesn't run off the table, but it's big enough to be a square. Then I turned left. Okay, so that worked great. And now that's it. I want to delete everything else, and I want to then loop this. So how do you loop? Well, loop is another graphical block down here, but it's under the flow control. So if you click on the flow control tab, you'll come in here and you'll see a loop construct. And what you do is you bring it over to here and you drop it on the start. And then what you want to do is I want to drag these movement blocks into the loop. So I go ahead and click on my select tool or my select option, and I'm going to grab these, and I'm actually just going to drag these right into the loop. So now I need to figure out how many times am I going to loop. And so you'll notice over here you have the infinity. What you want to do is you want to click on that, and you want to do it a certain number of times. So I hit count, and I want to do it 4 times. Okay, so at this point I'm good to go, and I should be able to go around my obstacle. Okay, and I'll use a coffee cup, and let's see if we can download this. So I'll go ahead and connect my cable and download, and let's see how this works. So I browse over to my local project or my loco project, and I have task 1, and here we go. And I'll kind of move my coffee cup in case it gets hit. Okay, so there it goes. Okay, so that kind of worked. It worked in terms of what I was trying to accomplish programming wise, but it didn't work because I had it close to the edge of the table. So let's try it again. I almost fell off the desk. Much better. Okay, so there you have it. So there we go. And now I can even have my obstacle in there now that I am brave enough to have a cup of coffee on there. And it's moving around the obstacle. And we did it with a loop. So we've actually covered 2 of the programming constructs. So we've done a sequence of tasks, and we've also done a loop. In this situation, it was a conditional loop because we told it don't loop forever. We only wanted to loop it for 4 times, but we were able to get a looping structure in there. So now we're building up some complexity in terms of what we can do with this tracker robot. And the next step is we are going to, now that we've concluded with locomotion, we can start looking at the sensors. And the sensors are going to give us the ability to make decisions about something that's happening in the environment. And that'll allow us to not only introduce the next programming construct, which is going to be the decision, but it'll also allow us to start creating a little bit more complicated programming tasks, which ultimately lead us to autonomy, which is where the robot can complete a task all by itself. Okay, so that's a wrap.